The sharp crack of the schoolteacher's ruler against her desk silenced the whispers, but Abigail Zimmerman could still feel their stares boring into her back as she gathered her belongings. It was 1875 in the dusty town of Cottonwood Springs, Arizona Territory, and at 25 years old, Abigail had become the subject of the town's most vicious gossip. "Remember, children, your essays on the Founding Fathers are due tomorrow," she announced, keeping her voice steady despite the knot in her stomach. As the children filed out, several mothers waited outside, their expressions cold as winter stone. Abigail heard one whisper to another, "Such a shame. 5 years married and nothing to show for it. What kind of woman can't give her husband children?" Tears threatened, but Abigail refused to let them fall. Not here. Not now. Her walk home felt longer than usual. The western sun beat down mercilessly on her navy blue dress, much like the townsfolk's judgment beat down on her spirit. 5 years married to Thomas Zimmerman, the town banker, and not a single pregnancy had come to term. The 2 early miscarriages she'd suffered were known only to her, Thomas, and the doctor. The white clapboard house at the edge of town had once represented her dreams. Now it felt like a prison. Thomas was waiting inside, hat already on, pocket watch in hand. "You're late," he said without looking up. "I'm needed at the bank. The Maxwell account needs attention before the stage arrives." "I'm sorry," Abigail said, setting down her books. "The children had questions about. I left dinner on the stove." "Don't wait up." Thomas hadn't touched her in months. Not since the last miscarriage. The disappointment in his eyes had gradually turned to resentment, then indifference. The gossip said he'd been seen entering Madame Rousseau's establishment on more than one occasion. Abigail pretended not to know what that meant. After Thomas left, Abigail sank into a chair at the kitchen table. The house's silence mocked her. How desperately she had wanted to fill it with the laughter of children. Their children. But her body had betrayed her, and now the entire town treated her as if her barrenness was contagious. 3 sharp knocks at the door startled her. Composing herself, she opened it to find Mrs. Holloway, the minister's wife, standing there with a pie. "Good evening, Abigail," she said with a thin smile that didn't reach her eyes. "The Ladies' Aid Society wanted to bring you this." "How kind," Abigail replied, accepting the offering. "We were discussing the upcoming Founders' Day celebration, and we thought perhaps you might want to assist with the decorations," Mrs. Holloway continued. "Since you don't have other obligations." The words stung like a slap. "I'll consider it," Abigail said, willing her voice not to shake. "Do that." Mrs. Holloway turned to leave, then paused. "Oh, and Abigail? The society is praying for you. Barrenness is often the Lord's way of pointing out a woman's inadequacies." After closing the door, Abigail didn't even realize she dropped the pie until she heard the ceramic dish shatter against the floor. The next morning brought no relief. As Abigail walked to the schoolhouse, she noticed people falling silent as she passed. The butcher's wife openly crossed herself. Even the children seemed to have been warned against getting too close to their teacher. The day dragged on endlessly. As the final bell rang, Abigail found herself alone again, straightening desks and collecting forgotten slates. The solitude was both a blessing and a curse. "Miss Zimmerman?" The deep voice from the doorway startled her. Abigail turned to find a tall man she'd never seen before leaning against the frame. His clothes were dusty from the trail, and his cowboy hat cast a shadow over eyes that seemed to catch every bit of the late afternoon light. "Mrs. Zimmerman," she corrected automatically. "My apologies, madam." He removed his hat, revealing sun-streaked brown hair. "Name's Nathan Zane. Just rode into town yesterday. I'm looking to settle some business with the land office, and the hotel owner mentioned you might be able to help me with some local history." Abigail straightened her desk. "I'm afraid Mr. Peterson at the saloon would know more about local history than I would. I've only lived here 6 years. That's 6 years longer than me," Nathan said with a smile that transformed his weathered face. "I'm interested in the old Crawford homestead east of town." Heard it might be for sale, but there's some question about the water rights. Abigail's interest was piqued despite herself. The Crawford place? Edward Crawford was one of my first students' grandfathers. He dug the well himself, if I recall correctly. Would you have any documentation about that? Land office says they lost some records in the fire of '69. Abigail hesitated. Thomas wouldn't approve of her speaking with a stranger, especially a cowboy. But Thomas rarely approved of anything she did these days. I have some old journals the Historical Society collected. You're welcome to look through them if you'd like. Nathan's smile broadened. I'd be much obliged, Mrs. Zimmerman. As they walked toward the small room at the back of the schoolhouse where the historical documents were kept, Abigail felt eyes on them. Mrs. Peterson was sweeping her front porch across the street, watching with undisguised interest. You've caused quite a stir, Abigail noted as she unlocked the storage room. Cottonwood Springs doesn't see many new faces. Small towns rarely do, Nathan replied. Makes a man stand out whether he wants to or not. For the next hour, they pored over dusty journals and faded maps. Nathan proved to be well educated, making observations about watershed patterns and property boundaries that impressed her. As the sun began to set, Abigail realized how late it had grown. I should be getting home, she said, reluctantly closing the journals she'd been reading. Allow me to walk you, Nathan offered. It's getting dark. That's not necessary, I insist. My mother would haunt me from her grave if I let a lady walk home alone at dusk. Outside, the evening air had cooled, and the first stars were appearing. Abigail was acutely aware of the stares following them down Main Street. Your town doesn't seem too friendly, Nathan observed quietly. They're wary of strangers, Abigail replied, though she knew it wasn't the entire truth. And of you? His directness caught her off guard. I'm not a stranger. No, but they watch you like one. His voice held no judgment, only curiosity. Abigail didn't respond, quickening her pace slightly. When they reached her house, she was relieved to see it was still dark. Thomas must still be at the bank. Thank you for your assistance today, Mrs. Zimmerman, Nathan said, replacing his hat. Might I call on you again if I have more questions? The Historical Society meets on Tuesdays, she replied, avoiding a direct answer. I wasn't asking about the Historical Society. His eyes held hers steadily. Before she could respond, the sound of approaching footsteps made them both turn. Thomas was striding toward them, his face a thundercloud. Abigail, he said coldly, I wasn't aware we were entertaining guests this evening. Mr. Zane was just leaving, Abigail said quickly. He had questions about the Crawford property. Thomas's eyes narrowed as he sized up the taller man. Any questions about local properties should be directed to the bank, Mr. Zane. I'm the manager there. Nathan nodded respectfully. Good to know, Mr. Zimmerman. Your wife was kind enough to share her historical knowledge. You're a fortunate man. Thomas's jaw tightened. Indeed. Good evening to you. After Nathan departed, Thomas's cold silence filled the house. Finally, as they prepared for bed, he spoke. I won't have you embarrassing me, Abigail. The whole town is already talking. We were simply looking through historical records, Abigail defended herself. You know very well how it looks when a married woman spends time alone with another man, especially some drifter. He's not a drifter. He's interested in purchasing the Crawford property. Thomas laughed humorlessly. A cowboy buying the Crawford place? With what money? He's probably just another fortune hunter passing through. Abigail said nothing more, turning away from her husband in bed. The distance between them had never felt wider. Over the next few weeks, Nathan became a regular sight in Cottonwood Springs. He secured a loan from the bank in the next town over, not Thomas's, and began repairs on the Crawford homestead. Each time Abigail saw him in town, he tipped his hat respectfully but kept his distance, clearly aware of the gossip their previous interaction had generated. One Tuesday afternoon, as Abigail was dismissing her class, a commotion outside drew everyone's attention. Several of the town's prominent women were gathered around the Petersons' daughter, Emily, who was sobbing hysterically. "What's happening?" Abigail asked, approaching the group. Mrs. Holloway turned with an accusatory glare. "Your cowboy friend just proposed marriage to Emily, and she accepted. Her parents are beside themselves." Abigail felt an unexpected pang. "Mr. Zane is hardly my friend, and Emily is 18. If they wish to marry, he's a drifter with suspicious intentions," Mrs. Holloway interrupted. "And you encouraged him by spending time alone with him. What kind of example are you setting for these impressionable girls?" The unfairness of the accusation left Abigail speechless. She returned to the schoolhouse, gathering her belongings with trembling hands. When she emerged, the women were gone, but Nathan stood waiting. "Mrs. Zimmerman," he said quietly, "may I have a word?" "I don't think that would be wise, Mr. Zane. Congratulations on your engagement." Nathan's brow furrowed. "Engagement? What are you talking about?" "To Emily Peterson. The town is in quite an uproar about it." A look of understanding crossed his face, followed by something like anger. "I've never proposed to anyone in this town." "I barely know the girl. I purchased some eggs from her family's farm yesterday, nothing more." Abigail hesitated. "But Mrs. Holloway said," "Mrs. Holloway seems intent on creating drama where none exists," Nathan interrupted. "Which seems to be a town specialty." Before Abigail could respond, a gunshot rang out from the direction of the saloon. They both turned to see Thomas stumbling onto the boardwalk, blood staining his white shirt. "Thomas!" Abigail cried, rushing toward her husband. Nathan was faster, reaching Thomas just as he collapsed. "Get the doctor," he ordered a bystander, then carefully examined the wound in Thomas's shoulder. "The stage," Thomas gasped, his face pale. "They took the bank's money." Within minutes, word spread through town. 3 men had robbed the bank while the weekly stage was loading, shooting Thomas when he tried to stop them. They'd escaped on horseback, heading east toward the mountains. The doctor arrived, and Nathan helped carry Thomas to their home. As the doctor worked to extract the bullet, Abigail paced anxiously in the front room. "He'll be all right," Nathan assured her. "The bullet went clean through." "Why are you still here?" Abigail asked, not unkindly. "Because you shouldn't be alone right now," he answered simply. When the doctor emerged, his prognosis confirmed Nathan's assessment. Thomas would recover, but needed rest and care. "I can stay with him tonight," Abigail told Nathan. "You've done more than enough." Nathan studied her face. "The sheriff's forming a posse to go after the robbers. I volunteered." "Why would you do that?" "You barely know anyone here." His eyes held hers steadily. "Perhaps I have my reasons for wanting to prove myself to this town." The posse departed at dawn. Thomas drifted in and out of consciousness, his fever breaking on the second day. By the third day, he was lucid enough to ask what had happened. "Nathan Zane helped bring you home," Abigail explained, changing his bandages. "He's gone with the posse to find the men who shot you." Thomas's eyes narrowed. "Zane again. Always trying to play the hero. He saved your life, Thomas." "He's trying to impress you," Thomas said bitterly. "Don't think I haven't noticed how he looks at you." Abigail sighed. "You're imagining things. Rest now." 5 days after the robbery, the posse returned. Abigail heard the commotion from her classroom and dismissed the children early. In the town square, Sheriff Adams was addressing a crowd. "Thanks to Mr. Zane's tracking skills, we recovered most of the stolen money," he announced. 2 of the thieves were killed resisting arrest. The third is in custody. Abigail's eyes found Nathan, standing off to the side. His face was sunburned and dusty, a new cut visible on his cheek, but he seemed otherwise unharmed. When he saw her, he nodded once but made no move to approach. That evening, as Abigail prepared dinner, a knock came at the door. Thomas, now able to sit up in a chair in the front room, called out, "Who is it?" Nathan Zane, came the reply. Thomas scowled. What do you want? Abigail opened the door, and Nathan removed his hat. Evening. Sheriff asked me to bring this by. He held out a canvas bag. It's the bank's money. Thomas struggled to his feet. I should count it. It's all there, Nathan said. Minus the reward the bank offered. Abigail invited him in, ignoring Thomas's glare. Would you like some coffee, Mr. Zane? You must be exhausted after your journey. That's kind of you, Mrs. Zimmerman, but I should be going. I've got repairs waiting at the homestead. So you're actually staying? Thomas said, more statement than question. Nathan nodded. The Crawford place needs work, but it's good land. I aim to make something of it. After he left, Thomas was unusually quiet. Finally, as Abigail helped him back to bed, he said, The bank's board has offered me a position in San Francisco. I'm considering taking it. Abigail froze. San Francisco? When were you going to tell me this? I'm telling you now, Thomas replied coolly. It would be a fresh start for us. Away from everything here. Away from the gossip, Abigail thought. Away from her failure as a wife. When would we leave? She asked quietly. I'd go ahead first, in a month or so. You could join me once I've secured housing. That night, Abigail lay awake long after Thomas had fallen asleep. The thought of leaving Cottonwood Springs brought both relief and apprehension. She'd grown to care for her students, despite the coldness of their parents. And then there was Nathan Zane, with his steady gaze and quiet strength. Why did the thought of never seeing him again fill her with such sadness? The following weeks brought a subtle shift in the town's attitude. The story of the posse's success, with Nathan's tracking skills prominently featured, had transformed him from suspicious outsider to local hero. Even Mrs. Holloway grudgingly acknowledged his contribution during the Sunday service. Thomas's recovery progressed slowly. His arm remained in a sling, and his temper grew shorter with each passing day. The bank board's offer became his favorite topic, painting an increasingly glowing picture of their future in San Francisco. You could teach at a proper school, he told Abigail one evening. Not some frontier shack filled with farmers' children. I like teaching here, Abigail replied softly. Thomas's expression hardened. What's keeping you here, Abigail? The town that whispers behind your back about your barrenness? Or something else? Before she could answer, another knock came at the door. This time it was Sheriff Adams. Evening, Thomas, Abigail, he said, nodding to each of them. Just wanted to let you know we've set a trial date for Miller, the bank robber we captured. Both of you may need to testify. When is the trial? Thomas asked. 2 weeks from Monday. Judge Parker will be riding circuit through here. After the sheriff left, Thomas's mood darkened further. This complicates matters. The bank board wants an answer by the end of the month. We can decide after the trial, Abigail suggested. I've already decided, Thomas snapped. I'm taking the position. The only question is whether you'll be coming with me. The night before the trial, Abigail found herself walking toward the schoolhouse long after dark. She couldn't sleep, and the thought of reviewing her lesson plans seemed preferable to lying awake beside Thomas's resentful silence. As she approached the schoolhouse, she noticed a light in the window. Cautiously, she peered inside to find Nathan Zane sitting at one of the children's desks, a book open before him. She knocked on the glass, startling him. When he opened the door, his surprise gave way to a smile. Mrs. Zimmerman. I hope you don't mind. The sheriff gave me a key so I could review some maps before tomorrow's testimony. Of course not, Abigail said, stepping inside. I couldn't sleep myself. An awkward silence fell between them, filled with unspoken words. I hear congratulations are in order, Nathan finally said. Your husband's new position in San Francisco. Abigail's shoulders tensed. News travels fast in small towns. Will you be going with him? The directness of his question took her aback. He's my husband. Nathan closed the book he'd been reading. That's not what I asked? Abigail turned away, moving toward her desk. What choice do I have? This town has made it clear what they think of me. Because you haven't given your husband children? The bluntness of his words made her gasp. Yes, I've heard the whispers. Small minds with nothing better to do than judge what they don't understand. You don't know anything about it, Abigail said, her voice trembling. I know you're more than your ability to bear children, Nathan replied, his voice gentle but firm. I know you're a dedicated teacher who stays late to help struggling students. I know you remember every child's birthday and bring them little gifts they treasure for years. I know because Emily Peterson told me how you comforted her when her mother died, even though her father had said cruel things about you. Tears welled in Abigail's eyes. Please stop. I know you deserve better than a husband who blames you for something beyond your control. Nathan continued, moving closer. A husband who seeks comfort in Madame Rousseau's establishment, while you face this town's cruelty alone. How dare you? Abigail whispered, but there was no force behind her words. I dare because someone needs to speak the truth, Nathan said, now standing before her. You don't have to go to San Francisco, Abigail. You could stay. Make a life here, or somewhere else, on your own terms. As what? The barren schoolteacher? The abandoned wife? What kind of life would that be? Nathan's hand reached for hers, hesitated, then gently took it. What about a life with someone who sees you for who you truly are? Someone who doesn't measure your worth by the children you can bear? Abigail pulled her hand away. Mr. Zane, you forget yourself. Maybe for the first time in my life, I'm remembering who I am, he replied. A man who's traveled from Texas to Montana looking for something he couldn't name. Until now. The trial brought the entire town to the courthouse. Abigail sat rigidly beside Thomas as witnesses recounted the robbery. When Nathan testified about tracking the thieves through the mountains, his calm confidence impressed even the visiting judge. During a recess, Abigail found herself alone in the corridor when Nathan approached. I apologize for my forwardness last night, he said quietly. It wasn't my place. No, it wasn't, Abigail agreed, but something in her expression softened. Though perhaps some truths needed speaking. Before Nathan could respond, Thomas appeared at her side, his good arm possessively circling her waist. The judge is ready to resume, he said coldly, leading her away. That evening, Thomas announced his decision. I've accepted the position. I leave on Friday's stage. Abigail set down her teacup carefully. I see. And when should I follow? Thomas's laugh was brittle. That depends on whether you want to follow at all, doesn't it? I'm not blind, Abigail. I've seen how you look at him. Thomas, no more lies. He interrupted. Our marriage has been dead for months. Years, perhaps. I stayed because divorce would be scandalous, but a job offer across the country provides the perfect excuse for a fresh start. For both of us. Abigail stared at him, speechless. I'll send for your things once I'm settled. Thomas continued. Or not, if you prefer. Either way, I'll be on Friday's stage. The news of Thomas's departure alone spread through Cottonwood Springs like wildfire. Abigail endured the stares and whispers with a strange new detachment. For the first time in years, she felt untethered, frightened but also oddly free. On Friday morning, she stood at the edge of the crowd gathered to see the stage off. Thomas didn't look for her as he boarded, his attention focused on the new life awaiting him. As the stage pulled away in a cloud of dust, Abigail felt a presence beside her. Are you all right? Nathan asked quietly. I don't know, she answered honestly. Would you walk with me? There's something I'd like to show you. They walked in silence through town, past the schoolhouse, and onto the road leading east. After a mile, they turned onto a smaller track that led to the Crawford homestead. The old house had been transformed, fresh paint, new glass in the windows, a garden newly planted beside the well. You've been busy, Abigail observed. I had motivation, Nathan replied. He led her to the porch, where two rocking chairs faced the setting sun. "Sit with me?" As they rocked gently, watching the western sky turn gold and crimson, Nathan spoke of his life before Cottonwood Springs. How he'd left his family's failing ranch in Texas after his parents died. How he'd drifted from job to job, saving every penny toward his dream of a place of his own. "When I saw the Crawford place, something felt right," he said. "Like I'd been looking for it without knowing." "It's beautiful," Abigail admitted. "It needs a woman's touch," Nathan said, then quickly added, "Not that I'm presuming anything. I know you need time." Abigail studied his profile in the fading light. "Why me, Mr. Zane? There are plenty of eligible young women in town who could give you children." Nathan turned to face her fully. "Because from the first moment I saw you standing in that schoolroom, spine straight despite the weight on your shoulders, I recognized something in you that called to me. A strength that has nothing to do with bearing children and everything to do with bearing life's sorrows without breaking." He reached for her hand, and this time she didn't pull away. "I can't promise you children, Nathan," she said softly, using his given name for the first time. "I'm not asking for children," he replied. "I'm asking for you. Your companionship. Your smile. Your love, if you can give it. That's all I need." Tears spilled down Abigail's cheeks, years of pain and rejection finding release. "The town will talk. Let them talk. We'll be too busy living to listen." A year later, the schoolhouse overflowed with children and parents gathered for the end-of-term celebration. Abigail Zane, married to Nathan in a quiet ceremony 6 months after Thomas's departure, handed out certificates to her students, her smile radiant despite the whispers that still occasionally followed her. After the celebration, she and Nathan walked home to the Crawford place, now a thriving small ranch with cattle grazing on the hillsides. "Mrs. Holloway cornered me again," Nathan said with a chuckle. "Offered to include us in the prayer circle for unfortunate couples." Abigail squeezed his hand. "What did you tell her?" "I told her we're the fortunate ones. We chose each other with open eyes and open hearts." As they crested the hill overlooking their home, Abigail paused. "Nathan, there's something I need to tell you." His expression grew concerned. "What is it?" Abigail took his hand and placed it gently on her stomach. "Dr. Wilson confirmed it yesterday. I'm with child." Nathan's eyes widened, then filled with tears. He gathered her into his arms, laughing and crying at once. "Abigail, that's I never expected, either did I," she admitted. "Dr. Wilson says sometimes when a woman feels safe and loved, her body responds differently." "Are you happy?" Nathan asked, searching her face. "Terrified," Abigail confessed. "After the miscarriages. But yes, I'm happy. So happy." "If this child comes, it will be a blessing," Nathan said, kissing her forehead. "But remember what I told you the day I proposed, your love is all I need. That hasn't changed." 6 months later, Abigail gave birth to a healthy daughter they named Hope. And when visitors came to see the child everyone in town had deemed impossible, they found not just a baby in a cradle, but a lesson in what love could create when it chose to see beyond society's narrow judgments, into the truth of a person's heart.